Most people don't even know what Jimmy Kimmel said. That was so offensive.
Be very careful about connecting your wallets when you have a crypto wallet.
Over his comments about Charlie Kirk.
This is the most powerful weapon.
So if you'll please join me in welcoming the co-owner of the Sacramento Kings, Chris Kelly, and Congressman Sam Liccardo. Let's just dive into this. We'll start with the Congressman. Let's talk about AI governance. Does this remind you? So me and Sam and Chris, we've known each other for a really long time. I used to work at a radio station in San Francisco called Alice at 97.3. We used to bring Sam on when he was mayor of San Jose.
The ratings plummeted. You stopped doing that, I know.
And
Thanks for having me back despite that.
I see him smiling at me, and I can tell he remembers the good old days.
Oh, yes. Except we got to keep it clean now.
Yeah, we got to keep it clean. So as someone representing the Silicon Valley, how do you balance the need to regulate AI to prevent harms while still growing innovation and thrive?
Yeah, the good news for those who are concerned about regulation coming from Congress is there's not a whole lot moving right now, nor has there been in an awful lot of areas of tech. I mean, I think we've been waiting for 30 years for a privacy rights bill to emerge. So, and reforms from Section 230 and a lot of other areas where I think a lot of folks have been waiting for many years. I expect there is going to be some more waiting with regard to AI. So the regulation's probably going to be coming from the executive branch and not from the legislative based on what I'm seeing right now. But I think there's imperative for us to pay attention to ensuring that we're not in there regulating the code and the algorithm, but rather a lighter touch focusing on the outcomes. I know there are certainly harms we need to be very concerned about, things like discrimination and fraud and so forth, and upgrading existing statutes to ensure that we are addressing how AI can be used in those contexts in harmful ways is going to be really imperative, and not getting in and start tinkering with how we're going to regulate code. And also, frankly, we need to have a single federal standard. I know the industry is very concerned about having to navigate a thicket of 50 different rules in 50 different states. So we need to have a fundamental federal standard so that we are not going to have bureaucratic and regulatory pinball for companies.
And this next one's for Chris. Chris, I know that there's a lot you don't necessarily agree with the current administration from a policy perspective, but you are in alignment with some of the legislation around crypto and DeFi. What are you excited about and why?
So the change over in administrations here has made a huge difference in the crypto area, and there has been that lighter touch on the way that that this has been approached, and a lot of experimentation is being allowed right now, which I think is a healthy step forward. At the same time, there needs to be regulation in the space, and stablecoin legislation has passed already, the Genius Act. There's Market Structure Act legislation that's being considered and is being taken seriously and being done carefully, which I think is encouraging. The administration has been very engaged on that with the Congress, and I think that there are some very productive discussions. Some people from the Valley have been brought in to do that, both on crypto and AI. Although every time everyone mentions AI in Washington, I always want to make a joke about Allen Iverson and Georgetown basketball. But AI can do amazing things, and he's in the Hall of Fame, and exactly.
It's the answer, yeah.
It is the answer.
Did you want to say anything about crypto? I didn't want to put you in a position where you had to compliment the president if you don't really want to.
No. I compliment the president on his hair all the time.
It's important to compliment where compliments are due.
The president has great hair. Look, I think there's been good progress on stablecoin, as Chris mentioned. The devil's in the details on this market structure bill, and I think there's an opportunity with this bill, I think it's got an opportunity to have a really positive impact. I'd like to see a couple tweaks, but tweaks don't require a whole overhaul. I think we're pretty close.
If you don't mind me asking, do you play around in Bitcoin or anything, or is this?
I don't, because I'm subscribing to the notion that really we ought not to be involved in trades of any kind as members of Congress. I sit on a financial services committee. I think there's some pretty inherent conflicts of interest. And I know that some of my colleagues have stood up and actually authored bills to do that and then engaged in hundreds of thousands of dollars of trades. I think that's probably bad form. We'd probably be better off to keep Congress in index funds and let the American people make profits.
All right, so this is for Sam and. Oh, hey, you got a round of applause.
Thanks, Mom. I appreciate
Hey,
it.
bro, we've been here all day. Nobody got a round of applause for anything. You were the first one. All right, so Sam, let's start with you, and then Chris, you could follow up. We live in California. We live in your district, and
Amen. The greatest district in the United States of America. Yes.
yeah, the 16th district. And during the pandemic, whether or not you agree with the COVID lockdown, there was a mass exodus out of California.
Yeah.
And how do you see those 500,000 people returning or new people returning to the state? Like, what are you doing to attract people back to California?
In my last job, a couple of jobs ago, I was teaching at Stanford, and before that I was a mayor of a city out there named San Jose. We did an awful lot to try to make it a place where it was easier to do business, to get through a lot of challenging regulations, and most importantly, to build housing. And that has been the primary constraint in California for the last 2 decades or more. Actually, I guess since I've lived there all my life, I'd say 5 decades. There's always been a housing crisis. It's just gotten worse. And there's a lot we can do and need to do. And I think there's been some recent progress. I think, kudos to leaders like Buffy Wicks and Scott and others who have been stepping up in a big way. And I think we're starting to figure it out. But I think 2 things can be true. Yes, there's been a lot of regulatory restriction in California. It's also the case that we've been a place where the best and brightest from around the world have wanted to come. I think that's the secret sauce of Silicon Valley. I mean, San Jose, 40% of our adults were born in a foreign country. And that's why we had the highest GDP of any city in the country, because of the fact that we were that place. If we are a country that scares immigrants away, that tells the best and brightest students that they should go back to China and India to start companies to compete against us, not only are we going to stop growing, we're going to really undermine our economic future.
No, and I think it's worth adding that, sort of during this supposed amazing, anti-business California thing, the economy has grown from being the 6th largest economy in the world on its own to the 4th largest economy in the world on its own.
Yeah, we're really in a slump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Don't tell Fox News, though.
They beat out, was it Germany or Japan? I think one of the two.
I can't remember.
I think it was Germany last. It was France before that, and then it was Germany that we passed.
Yeah, we don't want to hurt your ratings with German listeners, so let's stay away from mentioning which countries we pass.
Well, speaking of innovation, the 16th district is responsible for the companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, right, that are pushing a lot of this forward. How can we create a better environment for that to continue happening so the Bay Area can continue leading the charge in innovation?
Yeah, I think that, look, dynamic economies are dynamic precisely because they are open. Openness means openness to people, openness to new ideas, openness to markets, openness to technology. And we can succeed as long as we continue to embrace that openness. I mentioned the openness to people before. It's important for us to be a place where the best and brightest from around the world can be. But also, we need to be open to the fact that as we think about markets in this world, 95% of us denizens of this planet live somewhere outside the United States, which means tariffs probably aren't going to help us build coalitions, create new markets, create opportunities for our companies, which are all global. They need markets externally. Also, I would say, export restrictions and constraints on technology are not helping enormously either, and we need to navigate those a little better than we have. Having government ownership of companies doesn't help if we think about open markets and what we really want to promote. And so we need an administration and all of us to be on the same page about openness. Now, as a Democrat, I can tell you this is something Republicans actually got right back in the 80s, and we didn't always figure out very well. Now, unfortunately, we've got an administration that's decided openness is not a very good approach as we think about people and markets. And by the way, when we think about technologies and ideas, now we're going to have researchers and universities are going to be subject to all kinds of tests based on ideology and so forth, rather than allowing peer review to decide which research benefits which universities succeed. we need to re-embrace openness. That's what made us successful as a country.
And I think that the culture in Silicon Valley has continued to foster that, and some of the mobility in the way that different AI companies have split off from other AI companies, where there are some internal discussions. And I think you're seeing still some, even the larger players, including my former company Meta, and my old boss Mark Zuckerberg coming out with new AR glasses yesterday that they're rolling out, and all sorts of exciting things that are happening in the technology space, whether it's large language models or whatever will come next in AI. The Valley and San Francisco, the Bay Area continue to lead in that, by far.
I think it's interesting you guys mentioned like the open ecosystem. I heard a story recently. If there's two sets of farmers and the first set is competitive and they don't share best practices, maybe short term there will be some yields and some benefits, but it's the secondary group that's actually sharing best practices that will grow and have that collective intelligence from a long-term perspective. So it is kind of interesting to think about how we're sharing information and data, right?
Yeah, I agree, and competition is good. That's how we learn from those who win, and competition is good. We should embrace that.
Okay, so one thing about Chris, I did introduce him as the co-owner of the Sacramento Kings, but he was the first executive at Facebook. And for those of you who don't like the policies, he wrote all those policies. All right? You're mad at anyone?
They've evolved over the years in some good ways and some bad ones.
It was back in 1846 when it was still just a little on-campus social website.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to bring this up because you wrote about it on your Facebook, Sam.
Oh.
And so I think it's open game.
Okay.
Since you are, in reference to Jimmy Kimmel,
Yeah.
you wrote, looks like ABC has joined the Great Capitulation. What does that mean? Why did you write this?
Well, yeah, I obviously have an ideological bias in this, but even independent of ideology, I had some interesting conversations, I'd say, with some Republicans in the gym this morning who felt the same way. Look, we believe in the First Amendment for a good reason. I don't want to shut down Fox News. And the fact that somebody should criticize the president, by the way, with a pretty funny joke, and then have the commissioner of the FCC, that is actually the lead,
The chairman. Yeah.
the chairman, right, threaten a regulatory action, essentially to shut down the broadcast. That is unprecedented, and particularly for an entity, to get legal here for a moment, that is supposed to be quasi-judicial, meaning judges don't come out and start commenting publicly on what cases they're going to adjudicate, because we want them to be fair and impartial. We want them to consider all the evidence. We want them to have hearings. We want people to be able to state their case. We got an FCC commissioner out there basically saying, and reacting and saying, we're going to shut him down. I haven't even heard any evidence yet. And most people don't even know what Jimmy Kimmel said that was so offensive. That's the amazing thing. This is a dangerous path for America. We need to be a place where free speech is welcomed. We understand what speech looks like when it's dangerous. We have very clear rules around that. That's fine. Courts can litigate that. But in the meantime, we shouldn't be threatening to shut down newspapers or broadcast stations or anything else just because we don't like the speech.
Can I push back? And Sam, you don't have to answer the
Sure.
pushback. Chris
Yeah,
will. But this is from a reporter from the Middle East. She writes, I find it incredible that the left-wing media figures are bemoaning the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel over his comments about Charlie Kirk, not aware that there is a difference between a constitutional protection of free speech and a private company which is entitled to set whatever terms they choose for speech. So either they're being intellectually dishonest or willing to mislead the public. Now, we saw...
Sounds like somebody's never read our Constitution.
And
Yeah,
I think
look, this FCC is the federal government.
Yeah.
Like, let's be very clear. This is the most powerful weapon against free speech for an authoritarian regime, is a broadcasting regulator who's saying, we're going to take your license. I mean, you could go tell the DOJ to go criminally prosecute. Maybe that would be more efficient. But this is how authoritarianism happens. I'm sorry, Chris.
No, I was going to say it's actually intellectually dishonest to say that this is merely a private company act. This was an act of an official statement from a government official, basically saying, we're going to do it the easy way or the hard way. And that's a pretty astounding thing for any public official to say.
By the way, that's what you say to 4-year-olds right before they get spanked.
So is Bob Iger responsible at all?
Absolutely.
All right.
I mean, I think that Bob Iger should be criticized as well in this search.
By the way, the people overseeing this are very nervous that we're talking about this. I am getting signals all over the room, like, cut this
I
out.
promise I'll say this will be the last thing, and then
all
we'll
right.
get canceled, I promise.
Everyone is like, no more.
Look, we had a cancel culture back in 2021 that was enforced by 19-year-olds on college campuses. We now have a cancel culture that's enforced by the President of the United States and the head of the FCC. Now, you tell me what's more dangerous to democracy.
All right, let's move on. Huh, Brig? All right. Sam and Chris. We'll start with you, Sam. By the way, Tim, wave to everybody. That's Sam's gatekeeper. If anybody wants to
Yell at Tim for anything I say. Yell at Tim.
all right, Sam, let's start with you here, and then Chris, feel free to chime in. Do you see AI and blockchain as national security issues, especially when it comes to China's rapid growth development in these fields? Or do you want to start, Chris?
Sure. I mean, I absolutely. I think that we need to maintain our lead in development in decentralized finance protocols, in terms of the way that we think about how blockchains prove out the numbers behind financial transactions. And that's one of the reasons that I've gotten so excited about it over time, is that when I first read the Bitcoin white paper, I was much more excited about the blockchain side of it than the cryptocurrency side of it. And that having cryptographically provable distributed trusted ledgers is an incredibly powerful phenomenon. And luckily Vitalik Buterin and a number of other people continue to develop the concept, and that's how you got Ethereum on top of Bitcoin, or aside from Bitcoin, or as well as Bitcoin, and a lot of the other chains that continue to develop over time. And it's been an international phenomenon. Vitalik is an emigre from the former Soviet Union, and was in Canada, but has been all over the United States and Switzerland and a number of different places. But the support of American companies, including my company Alchemy, that I helped angel and that still work very closely with, it's been an important part to have American companies taking a lot of the lead here.
Let's talk about Alchemy real quick, because you were the first investor.
I was one of the, along with a number of we were all the first investors. We came over from another company that we had worked with these guys on.
Tell everyone about the gold standard of blockchain,
Well,
Alchemy.
I mean, providing support services to everyone who's experimenting. First in Ethereum, and then in Bitcoin and Solana and a number of the other chains, being the provider for the back-end provider for a lot of these things enables the type of development and and evolution of the space that we need to have technological leadership around in the world.
Yeah. So speaking of which, if we think about artificial intelligence as energy, chips, models, and algorithms, energy is a really important element that does tie into our relationship with China as well. So how can we create a better environment to be able to let energy truly thrive moving forward, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's some bipartisan opportunity here, particularly as we think about the grid and what critically needs to be done to both expand capacity and to harden it. It's a pretty creaky machine. It's the largest machine on the planet, by the way, the grid, and it's going to be pretty darn important for us in the future, whether we're concerned about climate change or AI or anything else. So I think being able to streamline permitting and really accelerate, build out a grid, as well as obviously energy production and storage, all those things are going to be important. I know that there is a lot of controversy right now about whether it's an all-the-above energy strategy or a focus on clean energy, which obviously I prefer. All that being said, right now we've got an administration that's not even pushing all the above. It's creating huge barriers for renewables and giving primacy, as on a bill we just voted on literally 2 days ago, giving primacy to fossil fuel sources for getting licenses to connect to the grid. We need all the sources of energy, and I think what we're going to learn in very short order is that we can build out battery, solar, wind faster, and particularly as costs come down around storage, much more cost effectively. And so let's allow innovation to get us there and not have the government putting its finger on the scale.
So can you describe like your day, Sam, where when you have to reach across the aisle and get your Republican colleagues to maybe, do something that they're on the fence about? How does that work? Do you walk into their office? Do you meet them for lunch? Do you have a cup of coffee with them? Do you send them a text? Describe that.
To persuade them to vote differently?
You say we're going to do this the easy way or the hard way?
I've tried that a couple of times. It doesn't go over very well, Chris. Chris and I actually went to high school together, and there was a very effective method that the Jesuits used. The acronym was called JUG, which stands for Justice Under God. Usually entailed all kinds of painful exercises. Anyway, we haven't tried that yet in Congress. Look, the short answer is I wish I could say I was successful in persuading anybody on the other side of the aisle to do much. I think I've lost 243 consecutive votes on the floor. No, I'm joking. I don't know exactly the number. We won one yesterday on Nancy Mace's motion. Anyway, but it's pretty rare. I think the great success, honestly, is just getting Republicans on bills where we have some area of agreement, right? Where that Venn diagram, for example, on housing, how we can expand housing supply. It's something Republicans and Democrats should agree on. We've managed to get 3 bills into the hopper now with Republican co-sponsors. That's really where a lot of my time is spent, is really trying to work on those ideas where I know we should agree. Let's find a path.
All right, we're going to open it up to the audience.
Hi, I'm Carla.
Hi, Carla.
I actually wanted to ask about the Silicon Valley bank failure. Some of you may know about it in 2023. So the challenge with that failure, of course, was treasury bonds, mortgages, and then also Bitcoin and or crypto. A lot of that's what.
That's inaccurate.
So why do you say that's inaccurate?
It's inaccurate. Bitcoin had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
I was on top of it for a number of different companies. The Bitcoin had absolutely nothing to do with it.
And I'm probably using the wrong terminology.
Yeah. It was interest rate. It was failure of interest rate swaps, and there was no crypto at Silicon Valley Bank.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And one other question: is there anything to be done about some of the fraud that is going on and I'm making a general comment in the crypto market? Quick example, I won't name the platform. I purchased some crypto a few years ago. Within 3 days, my account was wiped out. And so can you address that question?
I mean, there are unfortunately a lot of untrustworthy providers who sort of flock into new platforms. The nice thing about things that tie into the blockchains that are behind Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other kind of reputable cryptocurrencies is that you have a traceable record of all the transactions. Unfortunately, the scams, just like there are, you get mortgage fraud through or potential mortgage fraud through your robocalls to your phone right now, things like that. All those things are done with people try to do that in crypto too. You've got to be very careful about connecting your wallets when you have a crypto wallet to any unsolicited email that you get, or a text that you get, or any misrepresentation of your Coinbase account or your Kraken account or anything like that. But obviously, there has to be enforcement of these, and I think that the existing financial regulators are busy learning extensively, and there are great companies like Chainalysis that help law enforcement to prosecute those type of frauds.
Yeah, maybe I just add, I think there's a lot going on right now on the regulatory front. We've got a bill that passed the House, it's in the Senate, that would regulate the centralized platforms. I think that's positive development. The challenge is we know that increasingly people are moving off the centralized platforms to DeFi or decentralized protocols. And there it is much more difficult. There's actually no law being passed with regard to regulating that space. And I think what we critically need is some clear markers for consumers to understand that they're going from a centralized platform to a DeFi, that they're in a very different world. and that there is nobody who's going to readily be able to identify who that other person at the end of the transaction is because of pseudonymity. Obviously, chain analysis and others can help. But if you're trying to get a subpoena or trying to sue somebody because they defrauded you, you're going to have a hard time. And so I think we need to do a better job making sure consumers are aware of the difference between DeFi and centralized platforms so they can make good choices.
Thank you to the Silicon Valley Zombies guys for putting this on. This is fantastic. Mostly this question is for you, Sam. Given that during the last administration, we saw the Biden administration come after crypto CEOs, many of them were debanked and sanctioned. They came after AI companies. We saw President Trump roll out the AI action plan and a lot of amazing things on the crypto side as well. Can you commit to working with your colleagues to make sure that we win the AI race, we win crypto, and that we win the great power competition? Because we need to work together to make sure that our tech industry has the support of our government.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And look, I represent the Valley, so I get the imperative. And look, there's a lot of frustrated Democrats in the Valley through the Biden years, I know, who are unhappy with, the regulation by litigation approach at the SEC. And, not to mention the approach to antitrust, Lena Khan, where people simply didn't know what the rules were. It seemed as though everything was fair game for litigation. And we need to do a better job setting very clear lanes about what's legal and what's not, so people understand how they can comply. Look, there's a lot we need to do together in a bipartisan way. I've been convening now several sessions of Republican and Democratic frosh members. We tend to get along a little more easily than the rest of us do. Maybe we haven't been hardened yet by the acrimony. And for discussions about AI, we had Sam Altman meet us for breakfast a few weeks ago. We had Dario Amodei just a couple of days ago, and we're finding very generative conversations that are coming out of that around some alignment around, for example, what we need to do on energy infrastructure and other areas where I think there's a lot of opportunity for alignment. So I think it is important. But I would also say, as you think about the future of tech and what this administration is doing, openness has not been the hallmark of this current administration. And there's a lot of folks in tech who are deeply concerned about what we're doing on everything from trade policy to immigration. That is going to undermine our competitiveness in tech.
And let me say that I do think that the one area where there hasn't been much of a problem with openness from this administration is in crypto and the conversations that they've had. And I'm very happily engaged in common investments with a number of folks who are active with the administration. And I think that we've seen a lot from them there. But I share Sam's concern that on immigration, on sort of the tariff situation, on figuring out how the rules of the road are clear with everything except for crypto, where the rule seems to be that you can experiment extensively, and I think that that's actually the right answer right now. But other than that, there's been some challenges.
Chris,
in crypto,
you want to say anything about Gary Gensler?
Look, Gary Gensler's departure is good for America. I am happy to say that. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You are not on his Christmas card list anymore, Chris.
I'm Blair Bolden with Banyan Infrastructure. We're a fintech company working with all the sustainable energy folks to better finance the projects. And we had a lot of momentum last year. All of the organizations were going to get the greenhouse gas reduction fund, but majority of them, those billions, 20, maybe out of the 27 billion, maybe 22 were clawed back.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're doing to kind of keep the momentum going? Because there were a ton of jobs that were created last year in both congressional red districts as well as blue districts. And we just don't want to know how we can keep that momentum going.
Yeah, we're certainly having a lot of quiet conversations. I think you saw what happened, with the elimination of those tax credits through the big bloated budget bill that passed. We weren't seeing a lot of courage on the other side of the aisle standing up for him. But then, the speaker, when it happened to be that there was a wind project in a red district in Virginia that was really important, suddenly found a lot of courage to stand up and say, no, we got to protect this wind project, but all the other ones went away. I think there's a lot of Republicans on the side that would like to see us undo whatever happened just a couple months ago. We saw some buyer's remorse already with the bill. For example, Josh Hawley came out with a Medicare protection bill, I think 2 days after he voted.
Cut Medicare.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so it's been some interesting behavior. I think when we can get a little distance from what has all gone down over the last few weeks, I'd like to think we're going to see more Republicans stand up and say things that are more consistent with what I'm hearing when I'm in an elevator or the gym with them.
And shout out to you Bellarmine guys.
Right on. Go Bells.
San Jose State. So
I went to Sarah. I went to Sarah.
Spartans.
No to Bellarmine. No to Bellarmine.
Liccardo's football.
Nice. Very nice.
So when I was back at San Jose State, go Spartans.
Go Spartans. Right on.
I remember reading an article that said, "Is Google making us stupid?" Right? It said that traditionally we would be deep sea divers of knowledge, and now with Google we're kind of skimming along the surface like a jet ski. Do you think that AI is having a similar impact on us? Is artificial intelligence, like AI, intelligence on demand, is AI making us stupid?
I think my stupidity is really my own entirely. I don't blame anybody else for it. But I think it's going to require a different set of skills. I mean, we just think about, look, there's a lot of coders being displaced right now in software development as a result of what can be done with AI. And there's a lot of disruption there. What we do know about those who are remaining in those roles, they tend to be folks with the skills to babysit the AI. While the vibe coding is happening, they can actually look at the output and say, okay, this code is crap, or this is fine, and actually have the insight about how to fix it. We're going to need more babysitters of AI who understand what the intended outcome is and can understand better how to supervise it.
And interesting enough, I mean, sort of teachers are kind of holding the line right now. It's in high schools and colleges where people are, delivering ChatGPT written essays and things like that. I went to my daughter's back to school night. My daughter's a sophomore in high school, and the English teacher was they use Google Docs to sort of monitor these things over time. And he says, make sure that you use the Google Doc so that we can show that you actually wrote this. That, like, it doesn't just pop up, like you use ChatGPT for it. It's an aggressive posture that the smartest teachers are taking to make sure that the students are actually not just using ChatGPT to write their.
They're obviously smarter than I was. I was teaching at Stanford, and all I could tell students was, if you use AI, I won't know, but I'll hate you for the rest of my life. I have no idea how much that deterred them.
I'm Kia. I'm from the Bay Area. I actually lived and worked in San Jose for
Right on.
a while. Yep. I'm familiar with your work. Thank you very much for being a good mayor. And this question is for both of you, Chris and Sam. There was a report out of the Guardian that California and Louisiana are tied for the highest poverty rate in the United States. What do you think is causing that, being the fourth largest economy in the world? And if raising minimum wage has had sort of an impact on that, being a believer in minimum wage, that might have contributed or might not have. So what is your argument, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, based on the data I've seen, I don't think the minimum wage increase was the contributor. Look, we've had a housing crisis in California a long time. It's incredibly expensive to live there. And if you make under $120,000 in the county of Santa Clara, you are considered low income. This is the world that exists in California. And we know that the divide is getting larger, not smaller. Lots of folks are making a lot of money out there, and millions are struggling mightily to pay for subsistence where housing isn't being produced fast enough. So I happen to think housing is really at the core of all this, because we know that is driving a huge amount of the cost of living. Those, as I recall, that study was graded based on geographical differences in cost of living, and our costs are far too high.
Do you want to answer this? You want the next
I mean,
question?
I actually would also say that unfortunately it's partially a failure of our public educational system as well. That we need to make sure that we're providing extensive resources, and the fact that so many are open source and that the internet is available to more and more people. I actually think this is an area where AI can end up helping quite extensively for lower income students to get access to the same sort of great challenging factors through online courses, even if they're not getting them from their local public schools.
Is there any momentum in Congress to loosen accredited investor laws? largely because if you look at what's happening in crypto and the ability to go in, buy ICOs, do whatever you want, for emerging managers, especially if you're investing in VCs and other industries, and the fact that fewer companies are going public, why can't we go in earlier? Why can't people with lower incomes be able to enter? Why is the crowdfunding laws so restrictive and put so many burdens in terms of costs to do Reg A Plus or anything like that?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, there is momentum. And I know one bill just got out of financial services that was marked up about a month ago.
So Steve Case, the founder of AOL, always pointed out, he's like, you can take $10,000 into a casino anywhere in America and put it on, and put it on a roulette table. Why couldn't you put $10,000 into a startup? I mean, I think I think we need to abolish all accredited investor laws, but boy, they need to be a lot less restrictive than they are.
Great. Well, Sam, Chris, thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause here.
So much.
Also, for more of the best brains, check us out, like and follow on YouTube. And thanks so much, you guys.